Sure. Okay. Hey, I'm Philip. I'm glad to see all of you today. So a little bit about our family history. My great-grandfather, his name was John Guitar Sr., and he came to Texas from Carrollton, Missouri. And my great-grandfather, he was in the mercantile business in Missouri, and he relocated out here to Texas. And he got involved in the hotel business to start off with. In fact, he was partners with Conrad Hilton on some of their first hotels. They opened up a hotel in Cisco, Texas together. They opened up a hotel in Abilene together. And my great-grandfather bought cotton gins and cotton mills all along the railroad that stretched from Abilene to into New Mexico. And that was how he generated some income there in the beginning, was through the cotton business and owning some cottonseed oil mills and cotton gins and hotels. And from there, during the Depression, my great-grandfather started buying land and bought some ranches, and that's where he bought our ranch that we have out in Del City that this story surrounds. So that was a piece of property that he bought back in the early 1900s, and then he just kept acquiring land over time. And as he died, well, then we had other members take over. We had he had 8 children, my great-grandfather did, and so that guitar family has 8 separate families. And there was three of the members were boys, and the other 5, of course, were girls. And so we have different names, but they all generally followed in the family business. A lot of them did. And so my grandfather name was Earl Guitar. And Earl he was involved in the hotel business and the cotton business, and then eventually he got involved with commercial ranching. And that's how my dad came along. And my dad's a cowboy, he's a rancher, he loves cattle, he loves the Western way of life, and so my dad, took over as far as cattle goes. So that's a little bit about our family history and how we came to Texas and how we got our start here.
And so were you, growing up on the ranch, you grew up on doing the ranch?
Yeah, I grew up in Abilene, and we have a ranch out east of town, between Abilene and west of town, between Abilene and Clyde. So I grew up on a ranch out there, and we lived out there until I was probably 10 years old, and then we moved into Abilene. But yes, I grew up on a ranch, and my dad had me going at a young age with him, working cattle. I can remember when I was just like 6, 7 years old, he'd have me getting up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning on the weekends to go work cattle. And so I'd be like, why can't I watch cartoons like the rest of my friends? Why you got me out here? Why we have to get up so early? Why are we doing this? But it was all part of it, So yes, I did. I spent a lot of my early youth working with my dad, with our family, working cattle. Even all the way up through middle school and high school and college. And when I went to college at Texas Tech, and guns up, and yeah. So I was involved in. I used to team rope a lot, and so got involved in that, and then graduated from Hardin Simmons. But yes, I was raised on the ranch and was involved with our family ranching business for a long time.
Cool.
Talk to us a little bit about that West Texas Panhandle spirit. Because we have ranches all over Texas and all over, Oklahoma as well, but just something about the people who ranch West Texas. You have a unique spirit, a grit to you that's not found in any other place in this world. So for our viewers who are watching this, who are not here in Texas and who don't understand, talk to us about that spirit, that grit.
Sure. Well, that spirit, that grit, it's an independent ruggedness that are out there. And so a lot of people that get started in the ranching business, or they're involved in a ranching business in West Texas, they got a unique perspective because it's a hard life. It's a real hard life. life. And you're dealing in a part of the world that's desolate, and it's dusty, and it's beautiful in its own way, but it's a rough part of the world out there. And so it builds a lot of character in you. So you really got to be a strong-willed person out there to survive. And not only that, but the elements are difficult, the elements are tough, but just being involved in that business is tough. It's a real hard business to make a living at. There's just a lot of hardships that are involved in it. It's a beautiful way of life, but it's not an easy way of life. And so that's what I think it's different about West Texas, and especially people that are ranching in West Texas compared to East Texas or another part of Texas where you have a lot of grass, you have a lot of water, you have a lot of trees, you have a lot of this. West Texas is just a different animal altogether, and it builds a ruggedness in people. Men, women, everybody, that are out there in that part of the world, they develop a ruggedness to them.
Can you talk about, was the guitar family kind of initiated making this film, or did the director come to you, or can you talk about how it got started, the project got started?
Sure. The project got started was because through my connection with my dad, and I was very familiar with all this whole process from the very beginning. And I always liked this story because it had some courtroom drama and it dealt with some high stakes. And so it all came together was through my connection with my dad. And then I was at the Texas Supreme Court when all this was going on. So I lived through it in real time. And so it was close to my heart being there. And so I had been involved in some other film projects, and I was looking for my next project to get involved with. And I connected with the director, Mario Mattei. And Mario was the first one that I connected with on this, and that he and I got the ball rolling. But that's how we put this thing together. That's how it got formulated.
And Lauren, tell us where you came into the picture with all of this.
Yeah, so as Philip was talking about, this has been a part of his family's history for the last 2 decades, at least. The story has been developing. But they started scouting 3 years ago is when the film project got started. Philip contacted the director Mario Mattei, and then a little bit later on, John Michael Simpson of One Chameleon Entertainment came on to help produce. And he's the one who brought me onto the project to help coordinate production. And for Mario and John Michael, it was important to bring in elements of telling all sides of the story. So not just the guitar side, but trying to represent every element and every angle. So, we interview a lot of water experts and lobbyists and attorneys from all the sides, and invited people and got really close to speaking with some of the billionaires involved and some of the Supreme Court justices, but some of those interviews are hard to secure. But those are things that we were trying to go after to show all sides of the story, and really let this story play out to represent the path that this took all the way to the Texas Supreme Court.
Talk to us about storyboarding, because you have all these stories, you have these families who have rich history out in the Panhandle, and you're now a guardian of these stories and telling us in the documentary. So talk to us about storyboarding. Where did you start? Where did your research start? Obviously, you talked with a lot of families, but tell us a little bit about your research process and how you basically storyboarded this where it went into a nice flowing documentary that this is.
Do you want to start, Lauren?
Sure. This documentary really developed over the 3 years that we were working on it. You start interviewing people, and with a documentary, you don't know exactly what people are going to say or exactly how it's going to pan out until you have everything together. So there was a point about halfway through where we were like, we got to get more of this and more of this. So we did recreations, and we did more interviews, and we did follow-up footage with the subjects. And one of the big challenges of this project was taking a very dense and theoretical concept where we're talking about historical permitting and water district boundaries and all sorts of very tedious but important elements that when you try to read a newspaper article about the Supreme Court case, it's very hard to get through because it's so meticulous. So it was important to the director, Mario, to show all those elements and explain that to somebody, but to also create a visually compelling piece of work with rich characters. So I think bringing on cinematographer Jacob Hamilton was really important, and he came on right from the beginning. And he brought such compelling captures of West Texas. Right, it's about interweaving the very specific regulations of a local water board and the permitting rules with all these characters and telling their story so it pans out across the movie. And interweaving those stories with recreations.
What was your aha moment that you knew through the process that you got this story? Was it?
Well, one thing too, I also just want to add on the storyboarding was that we had when we started off, I had a box from from a cousin that had all this information in it. So that's where Mario and I first started digging in at that point. And I told Mario from the very beginning, I was like, look, there's two sides to every coin, of course. And we want to go in and tell this story. I don't want to try to tell this story one-sided at all. It's got to be done. We need to really dig in and look at all sides of this story. So when we were starting to do this, we took our character list from everybody that we had contacts with in our folder, and one of the greatest people that helped us with all this was Laura Lynch, who is in the film. She's one of our leading protagonists, and Laura was one that really helped us connect up with people on our storyboard, and okay, we can't reach this person, but we can reach this person, and so that she was a great liaison for us in that regard. But I want to say that one of the aha moments, I think one of the things I would say is when when Mario looked at the Supreme Court footage. Mario was at a point where that's an aha moment. That's what he told me that was for him. It was, and I feel like for me it was. I feel like it was. I really felt like talking with Senator Perry. We were towards the end of the film, but I felt like the connection with the senator and his viewpoints on it was like, this really brings the whole story home. This really connects it on a statewide level. And so I felt like that for me, that was one. There may have been several, but that was the main aha point for me.
Yeah, I think it was pretty late in the process as well. Like after we had a rough cut assembled and were able to do a test screening and get feedback from folks and incorporate that into the story and see where people still had questions. So that test screening was really helpful, and knowing what else we needed to capture to really bring it together into a compelling story.
What did you learn in the test screening specifically? Like what were the notes that people had where you're from?
Well, because of those specific details of the regulations and the permitting, we were really looking for where are people confused and where do they need more clarity and where can we add that in there. So I think that was one of the main things was really trying to create a film that makes sense to viewers.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it was connecting it up. There were some questions along the lines like there was a lot of legal information there, and just trying to connect all the dots on that legal side was some of the questions we got from the screening that stood out to me.
Mm-hmm. And also after that, we added in a lot of archival material that really helped bring everything to life.
That's right. We had an archival producer. Really great guy, Ian. He came in and was able to dig up a lot of great information for us.
Mm-hmm. And we also did the recreations after that as well so it's using a lot of other imagery besides just talking heads to tell the story.
What were some of the archives you pulled from? Because you guys had extensive archival footage.
There was CBS news footage we have with Peter Jennings. There's a lot of media from news that we pull from. We pull newspaper articles. We pull from Texas Monthly articles. We pull from
There's Pond 5 materials and there's public domain. materials?
Well, yeah, there was a lot of information from there was Wall Street Journal material. So he was really great at pulling a lot of these news conferences too, as well as on TV media.
I'm sorry, when you were at the Supreme Court, were you recording that?
No, I wasn't. I was in there. I was sitting next to my dad in the gallery. We were sitting back in the back, and so we were taking it in. And they record the Supreme Court records their own. They have their own people that record it. So it's on. That's how that gets recorded. But no, I wasn't filming anything in there.
Okay. Public domain.
Yeah.
It's much like C-SPAN does with the...
Yeah.
It's 100%. She had a question.
A majority of your potential audience, they're not rangers, they're not from East Texas. So what can the layperson get from the film? And what's kind of your elevator pitch of this is why you should care, this is why you should watch?
I think the main thing I would say is it's an underdog story, and it's a story about having your rights taken away. And I think anybody can identify with having your rights taken away, whether they're water rights or physical rights or home rights or, your civil rights or anything. So to me, the layperson can connect up with having their rights taken away unjustly and not knowing why. And that's how I would say that's my perspective.
Hugely educational for me in the fact that, my family owns land and we've always had the mineral rights. This kind of blew me away that if you own the land and the mineral below, a la oil in Texas thought process, but then it's almost like, doesn't matter at all if it's water. If this municipality decides they're going to use your water in a different way than you're going to use it, they can do it, from what I could understand from what I was watching. And that's kind of scary and scary. And what's the point of owning the land?
Yeah, 100%. And that's it. That's it's having something that you own taken away, and you don't even really understand why.
Yeah. And aren't being compensated properly for it, which was the biggest part, right?
Correct. Yes, that is 100%. Yes.
And in y'all's case, it seems as if they were picking and choosing how and who they were going to provide said compensation.
That's exactly right. They were, being that we were primarily ranching. We didn't have cultivated farmland out there. We weren't using, we weren't farming a crop. We had dry land for cattle. They were saying that we'll let you have enough water to water your cattle, which is a minute amount of water, but we cannot, you cannot transport the water out of the district. You can't use the water for any other reason. So essentially they took it away from us.
Crazy. Well, the one question I have is, in this process, throughout the time of what your documentary covers, have there been positive changes to the laws in Texas due to these cases?
Well, I was on the last question, which kind of relates to this one too, is that this is a quintessential Texas story that represents Texas perspectives on land management and water management, and the Supreme Court case is still one of the few cases that is referenced in court law on water rights in Texas. So it's still relevant to legal cases today. And there are ongoing petitions to the court, every day regarding water rights. So I don't know of a specific case.
Yeah, and I think one thing it's done is a lot of these, if it's a rogue like water board commission, they take a look at this and they'll see, hey, there's a precedent that was set here with this case in Husband County. So they don't want to go forward with it because they realize that, hey, maybe there's not a case, but this has prevented something like that from moving forward. So I feel like from that aspect, just having that precedent, that case in case law has established it. Now there's always a lot of water cases going on, and in fact I've got lawyer friends of mine, and they tell me, if you really want to get in, if you're going into law and you really want to get into something that's lucrative, and what we need is more water lawyers. There's a big thing. So there is a lot of things around water law, but I feel like that this case in general has helped kind of, I don't know of another one of this level that's been out there, but I feel like that this has kind of put the brakes on someone trying to, possibly recapture the same style.
I might have missed it in the movie. What year did the Supreme Court case finally was it decided?
It was in 2008.
2008.
Yeah,
so is it like, because obviously I guess it could move to the Supreme Court if they decided to look at it, the U.S. Supreme Court. Did anybody try to take it to the next level, or?
We didn't try to take it to the next level. I mean, we were
The billionaires.
right. The billionaires. They never did. No, it stopped at that point. Yeah, right. There was no other court
In
involvement.
fact, it was a unanimous decision.
Yes.
Stopped it.
Question, how many families either stopped ranching or stopped farming after all of this? Because I know I saw that a lot of them sold a lot of land, but I know that would not have been all of their land to El Paso.
Okay, so there's a lot of ranches out there that just got out of the business altogether. You talking about how many sold to El Paso, or how many?
Well, not just selling to El Paso, but just got out of the business.
Oh yeah,
Because it's not profitable.
a lot of them were like, this was like their ace in the hole. They realized, hey, we own this water, and maybe we can't utilize this water today, but somewhere down the road, we're banking on this water. We're going to be able to sell this water, and this is going to save the ranch. This is going to save us. This is going to sustain our family for years, okay? And so when they realized that, hey, these rights you have are worth nothing, then the people were like, we can't, some people did say, we can't hang on and keep ranching out here. We don't have the financial means to it. So how many people did? Like, I don't know the exact number, but I do know that there's been a number of ranchers that just had to toss in the towel. Some farmers too that just couldn't afford to keep going, especially once that they realized that they couldn't, they didn't have access to their water rights.
Well, that's the one family that you talk, that gets to talk 2-3 times. They can't start farming again because they don't have access to the rights.
They
Haven't been using it during that period.
They right, but they actually, through that court case, has allowed them to access now too. So they actually are trying to get their farms back and going again. So that family, this case actually impacted them, and they were grateful that this happened, because at the time they said in the movie they did not have the financial means to fight this case, but luckily it prevailed and it helped them move forward.
Yeah, and at the end of the film, there's the El Paso water utility CEO talking about how they acquired these lands in Del City, and while they are using those waters to export to get to El Paso, they're also managing farms on those properties. So kind of a continuation of farming through the El Paso land ownership.
So first you want as many people as humanly possible to see this movie. We know that, we're going to help with that. But how do you decide how deep to go with the legal, with the science, to where it's not losing people because it's too high of a level, or it's not losing people because it's not high enough of a level? How did you process through that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and definitely something that our team went back and forth on a lot of times. But you have to have these minute details in the film in order for people to understand the full picture. And if people do zone out for a second and, look at their phones and then look back when the story becomes more engaging again, hopefully they'll get the big picture through the film. But that's something that we still talk about every day.
And I think some people like procedural dramas, and some people really like legal shows and legal stories. And so this is for the person that likes a legal story. I mean, we got one for you. You know, we're taking you through the Texas Supreme Court. We go through all the courts and end in the Texas Supreme Court. So for someone that's a legal-minded person that enjoys legal films, I mean, this is one for you. It also deals with a lot of rugged characters, and you mentioned earlier about individual rugged characters, you know, cowboys, ranchers. So that, I think, is a character analysis in itself. So they're interesting characters on both sides. If you look at the board members, I mean, we've got some really, you know, authentic, unique people there. So I think that's, you know, I think that's part of it that's not, yes, we have the legal, and yes, it's a legal story, but we've got some really authentic characters in the story as well.
How far do the deeds go as far as land rights? In order to get the mineral rights, the water rights, regardless of the debt or whatever. The first deed that was ever given to the first person that bought the land.
Sure. Most of these deeds in Texas were set up through the railroad. The railroads were the first people. So that's who the state ended up giving for the railroads. And then the state would do a patent where they patent the land and give these deeds away. So if you did a title research, a title exam, and you started back with, you know, the Texas and the patent, and then, you know, the first people, it would go back to the University of Texas. El Paso has a lot of land out there too that was deeded from the state. But I don't know how many people that own the land between, like, when my great-grandfather bought the deed to the land and between when the state of Texas gave its first patent on that land. I don't know how many people were. This ranch was originally part of what they call the TC Ranch. That was the original ranch, the Daughtry TC Ranch, and this ranch was back in the late 1800s, all the way before, you know, we got it. And then like a lot of ranches, when people die off, the patriarch or the matriarch, well, then they air it down to the kids, and then it's broken off. And that's kind of what happened with the TC Ranch. They just started breaking up the ranch as people died, and they started selling off, you know, portions of it. But before them, I don't know how many people had it between them and the initial patent.
So when it went from deed to deed, they gave up so much percentage of mineral rights or water rights.
Well,
is that in the deeds that far back?
Yeah, that's in the deed. It's like when we bought it, our deed included the surface rights and the mineral rights, and in general that includes everything beneath the soil. Now, the only exception would be is if I own this land and I'm selling it to you, and I reserve those rights, and I say I'm going to sell you the mineral rights, but I'm reserving the water rights, or I'm reserving the oil and gas rights, or something like that. But when we bought it, it passed along. Our family had got the surface, all the surface, and all the mineral rights. And
when I bought land, I was given 1/8 of the mineral rights, regardless of how deep or whatever.
Right.
So I'm just wondering how much of it was steep, watered down as, to the present day.
Right. When we didn't have that situation, when we bought it, we got 100%. We owned 100% of the rights. So it wasn't a situation where there was other mineral right owners. It had been watered down, like you're saying. It transferred all to us.
So a lot of people that are losing their ranch are the current owners who have basically no mineral water rights. They just have the surface of it.
They might own both. They could own. Yes, that could be true. In one instance, some people have the surface, they don't have the water, and so there's just no way of making a living anymore. You know, with that, and there could be where you own both of them, and then it's just a fact where that. Now it's open to where anybody can export the water, but maybe there's just they're trying to make a deal, or they haven't been able to make a deal, or for whatever reason they're not able to utilize it in one instance. But it's not because that the government has taken their rights away at that point.
So the government is taking all those rights beneath the land. Is that what I'm understanding?
No. Okay. So essentially, what happened was there was a water district out there, the Hudspeth County Water District, and they in turn write rules for everybody that owns land within the district on water. And that district, in their bylaws, made some changes to where that they stated that they were stating that they're basically what you can and can't do with the water. And they were saying that you could not export the water outside of the district. If you were a rancher, if you hadn't used your water in 10 years and you were a rancher or a farmer, and so basically, if you're trying to sell this water to El Paso, they're saying that you can't export the water outside of the district. So you're just stuck right there. We'll give you enough water to water your cattle, and that's it. But that your rights have essentially been stripped away.
So it's one of the infrastructure, not so much the water itself. Let's just say that, like this water. All right, you can drink the water, but yet you can't keep the cup. And in order for me to get the water, I need the cup. But in order to get the cup, I have to pay you a certain amount of time. So I cannot transport it.
If you can drink the water, but you can't give her the water.
Correct. That's basically.
And you only get what you can use to meet your own personal needs or your heads and cattle.
Right.
That's all you can use. And if you're allotted extra, but you don't have any other heads and cattle.
That's still infrastructure. I can't give it to her unless I have a cup to get to it.
It was about the type of permits that were allowed to be issued.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's what
right, this is where people in the film will start to glaze over a little bit. But, right, it was like the 10-year period was put in place by the Water Board in Del City, or the Hudspeth County Water Board, for historic use permits, and then only certain folks could get transfer permits out of that.
The reason I'm going that line of reasoning is that I'm a student of constitutional law, and that trying to understand, the path as to how we got to where we got. And the understanding is how to win the case as to how it got so convoluted that you can't even transport water or
I think you'll enjoy the film.
To get to her.
That's the puzzle, that's the mystery, and that's the heart of the story. And I think that's what you're going to get out of it. You're going to get to find those details out.
Yeah, and it's all taking place in a very small town, and certain members of the board have colorful histories and have, all the board members were farmers, and all the ranchers were like, what is going on here? So there's just a lot more to the story. And ultimately, at the end, more water is able to be transferred to El Paso to get it from the Bone Springs Victoria Peak aquifer that refills from the Sacramento Mountain snowfall every year. So ultimately, water is transferred to El Paso, and that's what we want to see happen.
I can't imagine.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to pivot and just, Laura Lynch was shown to be so passionate about this case, about Del City. Does the film hold now a more special meaning for you because it immortalizes that legacy?
100% for me, because I knew Laura before this started. But I really got to know Laura once we got to filming on this, and we got to spending time out there with her. And I got we all got really close with Laura. And Laura was such a tremendous friend to all of us, and she took such good care of us. And she was our logistical liaison out there. She was our, talk about storyboarding, she was our story analyst in a way. She was just a magical person. She never wanted us to leave Del City without throwing us a party. She always threw these fabulous parties out there, and she.
I love how many times she'd say, "Wait, can I not say that?"
Yeah. Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. But it was a special, and I think one of the most special parts of it was I was talking with Laura just like 2 days around the 21st of 2023, and we were talking on the phone, and she lives in Fort Worth, and I'm in Fort Worth, and she was just, I mean, she was on fire for this film. She just wanted to know, when is it coming out? When is the premiere? What, you know, she just wanted to talk about all these aspects of it. And we were talking, and she was excited about Christmas, and just, man, she just wanted to know what's next? What's next? When can I see it? You know, and I'm like, okay, Laura, we got this, and we're ready, you know, we're finishing up editing, and okay, great, I'm glad to hear it. So we hung up the phone, and I just, like I said, Laura is a firecracker, and I mean that in a positive way. She's a firecracker for life. And it was just 2 days later, I'm going to the DFW airport to spend Christmas with my family, and I get a call from a lady in Del City, and did you hear about Laura? You know, there was a tragic car wreck. So it was 2 days later. And so, yes, it was emotional for me, and it was emotional, I think, for our whole group, our whole team. And I just know that night when I got in where I was visiting with my family, I didn't even want to go out, and I went to my hotel room, and I just wanted to be quiet. I wanted and listen to the stillness, and I just didn't do anything. But it does hold us. She holds a special place in our hearts for sure.
So she never got to see any kind of finished cut of the film before, no?
She did get to see, she got to see parts of it. We showed her parts of it, and she was excited about it. So she did get to see that, but she never got to see a finished copy, no.
Yeah, it was really tragic, and like, founding member of the Dixie Chicks, or the Chicks, and she had so much charisma in person and on the screen. And right, Del City, you know, it has 2 restaurants, they close at 2 p.m. Like, we stayed at her Airbnbs when the crew was out there. Like, she helped us find caterers so that we could feed our team. And it was just such a big help in production. And I mean, of course, far bigger than the movie was she was just way too young, had so much life ahead of her. So it's just like so hard to have to continue working on the edit, you know, every day after she had passed.
She was the heart of the film.
Yeah, heart and soul of the film.
What did you learn about, this question's for both of y'all, what did you learn about yourself professionally and personally while making this film?
Let me go first.
Well, I'm a Texan, so I've been out to West Texas a lot and enjoy just getting to know these Texas stories. But like professionally, this was a bigger step for me up into the production world. I was brought on as a production coordinator, but with such a small production team, I'm credited as an associate producer on it, and was able to do casting for the recreations and just do a whole lot of other tasks. And everybody on the project was wearing a lot of hats because we were a small team. So don't let the like high quality of it fool you. Like, this is an independent project. So just working with a small team of people and bringing a story to life always has a lot of challenges and intricacies. So I learned a lot professionally, and you know, I'm trying to think of some good personal growth stories, but it's been a really interesting project, and definitely learned a lot about the legal and zoning and coding. And you know, this story takes place in the legislature as well as in the courts as well as in the water board, so just a lot of learning. And I've worked in some like electrical coding stuff for other jobs, but not the water regulations as much. So really a lot of studying of the ins and outs of the case.
It's an interesting thing, because we just getting back to what we were talking earlier. Saudi Arabia, some of the Middle Eastern countries, in one of the states, has basically bought thousands of acres, and there's a lake in those acres. And what they're doing is siphoning the water out of that lake and taking it to Saudi Arabia. And the governor, or the people in that county are saying, hey, you can't do that. So they're suing the state to retain the water rights to what they bought the land. And so there's a big fight right now in that respect. So it would be interesting to keep an eye on that particular lawsuit and see if it creates a precedence towards your case.
Yeah, that's great information, and I think like Laura pointed this out too, and she mentioned it. She says it doesn't matter if a person owns, 100,000 acres or they own 1 acre of land. This situation can happen to anyone, and so there's these situations happen all over the world. You're talking about Saudi Arabia. It can happen anywhere and everywhere.
What did you learn about yourself?
Yeah, you can get out of that question.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I learned. I learned I need people like Lauren here. That's what I need. I need people like her.
I have a follow-up question. What I really loved about your film is I'm a documentary junkie. I love documentaries. But when it comes to the legislature, when it comes to the Supreme Court here in Texas, most Texans don't even understand what's going on in Austin. You ask someone in Garland or Dallas or Houston or Sugar Land, they don't know what's going on in Austin. So what advice do you give other filmmakers who deal with a lot of legal stuff in their documentaries? What advice could you give them about putting this together beautifully and letting the layperson, someone who is from Texas and doesn't understand our legislature, or someone who's in Canada and doesn't know anything about U.S. politics, what was your secret sauce to this, and what advice do you give to other filmmakers doing other documentaries moving forward, dealing with such, in-depth legal and legislative issues?
Yeah, I do wish we had director Mario and producer John Michael here to answer some of that question, because they did a lot of the story configuring. But I think, you're talking about how how it folded out across the course of the story.
If I was going to do a documentary next year about whatever, what advice would you give me or other filmmakers? Because I did not feel confused. I don't understand the legislature too much, but I felt like I did not get bored with it. But you watch a lot of documentaries that deal with legal or legislative matters, and it's like 5 minutes I'm glossed over. I'm like,
Well, yeah, and I want to concur with what Lauren said, but also, like our cinematographer, Jake Hamilton, he's a producer in his own right, a director, so like he had a lot of history as well to bring to the table. And I think that it's just a continuous effort to trim the fat. And so you're talking with lawyers, you're talking with legal people, whoever that you can get access to on the legal side, if it's a judge, if it's a politician, if it's someone like that, and then you got to go back through all this footage and then just trim the fat and trim the fat and trim the fat and just make sure that you're keeping with the spine of the story would be my advice. Just stick to the spine, because it can go a lot of different ways and it can get off and it can get confusing. But if you're a director, if everybody on your team is cohesive and this is the spine of our story, and you're continuously going back over your rough cuts and you're just trimming the fat to try to keep it as simplified as possible. That's my thing. And I think doing these test screenings, we learned a lot from people in test screenings, and they would tell us, hey, I really like this part. This was great. Really have a question about this, or could you explain this a little bit more? And so, by having these test screenings, we learned. So I would recommend to any filmmakers, if you have access to do a test screening, to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that a lot of the success of the full story unfolding is that it's just one piece of information at a time. So instead of having a legal expert sit down at the very beginning of the film and explain the whole thing, instead of that, you have little pieces that unfold, so that by the time you get to the 3/4 mark, when the Supreme Court footage is being used, you finally understand a complete picture of all of the different elements that are playing out there.
That, and I want to just add one last comment on that, is that the director, Mario Mattei, when he got involved in this, he did such a deep dive that he knows a lot more about this story than I do, and if you can get someone like that you get teamed up with and they're as passionate about it and they know even more about the story, than you do, like that's a key element right there. So Mario did such a deep dive, and and I'm talking about in the very beginning of this, he knew this whole thing backwards and forwards.
Have you had any conversations with Patrick Bush, the past planning commissioner for Texas?
Who? You mean George P. Bush?
Yeah, Patrick Bush.
Well, we did meet with George P. Bush. Not a Patrick Bush, but we met with him. But we were talking about some lands that what they call UT Texas lands outside of the water district, and my dad's a personal friend of his, and so we have met with Have we met with him? Yes, we have met with him when he was the land commissioner.
The reason I ask is one of the questions before he became the land commissioner, and I had a big long conversation with him, and part of it was water. Texas, with all these people coming in, water was going to be an issue. And sure enough, we had problems with Oklahoma, with the Red River, which we're not getting. He did keep his promise in getting more lakes built in Texas, and in order to try to have sufficient water for a lot of the cities, especially here in North Texas. One of the things is that he said he was going to rush on, because he was a lawyer, was on water rights.
I don't know exactly what all happened with that. It may have happened for sure, but I do know that just like Senator Perry and other politicians, the people that need the water are the residents of El Paso in this story, and we're talking about millions of people, and they need water, and that's what this is about, getting water to the people that need it. So whether it deals with surface water, lake water, or water that comes from the aquifer, as long as we can get the water to the people that need it, which is all of us, that's the main essence, in my opinion.
Who did y'all decide on for your final voicing?
We used a voiceover actor named Dave Howell out of Houston.
Because I saw it, it said Tim version that we were watching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had been trying to attach a name talent to the project, and that search is continuing, but for now, Dave Howell did a really impressive job, and we'll be excited for everybody to see that at DIF.
So you have your world premiere at the Dallas International Film Festival in 2 weeks and 1 day.
Yeah.
And as filmmakers, what does it mean to world premiere this at a prestigious Texas film festival? But also, too, what are your film festival plans after Dallas?
I'm thrilled that we are having our world premiere here. I mean,
Sell out, too.
Sell out. I mean, yeah, sell out. You try it. That's right. You still get some for Sunday, but yeah, Friday's sold out. I'm just overwhelmed, and I think this is the perfect spot for this story. I think that we are just fortunate to be able to get in to DIF. I mean, we are very, very fortunate, and I think this is a perfect spot for it. And I also think that this is a Texas story, so and Dallas is kind of one of the hearts of Texas in a way. So I just think that you couldn't ask for a more prominent place to show this and bring it to the world and DIF. And I think our future plans are we want to connect with other Texas festivals as well, and other large festivals that we can connect with and play it by ear. But it's we felt like that. Well, I mean, we're Texas people too. So I'm Fort Worth, and Lauren's in Austin. A lot of our crew's in Austin. So not only being a Texas story. I mean, we didn't fly in here from LA to shoot this and fly back to LA. I mean, we're all pretty much Texas people. So we were hoping and we would get accepted to DIF, and I'm eternally grateful that we did get in.
And speaking of that, talk to us about the Texas cruise, because everyone thinks that, hey, you have to be in LA or New York or Chicago. Talk to us about the cruise here in Texas and the importance of using a Texas crew and the talent we have here.
Yeah, that's a great topic to discuss with this film because we want to continue to support and grow the film scene here in Texas. And Austin has a lot of film studios coming in, and a lot of folks in Austin go up to Waco to work for the Magnolia Network, Chip and Joanna Gaines' network up there. But yeah, we've got a lot of talent here in Texas, and we are ready to work and ready to make more stories.
A lot of independent people out here too. So, like for example, in Austin, if you're talking about cameramen, cinematographers, sound editors, just a ton of, and in Dallas as well. I'm not excluding it, but all over. So you have a lot of independent, non-studio people that are highly qualified, highly talented people that are here in this Texas film scene, and they're working and they're ready to do more projects. But very, very skilled people. Been doing it a while, and they're probably some of the best of the best, in my opinion.
I got a last question for you. You're a rancher by trade. Did you get bit by the film bug? Would you want to get involved in another film project in the future?
Yes, I love to write. Okay, so I have been writing short stories a long time and got into script writing, and I actually made a movie before this, and I've done something. So this my company Red Aces Productions, we're actively working on other projects as we speak. So you bet, this is my passion. This is what I love, and I'm moving forward on it.
Do you like the documentary side of it or the narrative side of it?
I like both. I do. I like both. I would say that I've definitely, the doc side has connected with me, and I enjoy that. But I like both sides.
Was that the doc as a documentary side or dark as in?
I like dark stories. I like thrillers. But in this reference, I guess I was referring to doc.
I wanted to make sure they had cookies.
Yeah. Right.
And I have to admit, it's got to be a lot easier to do than getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go out in the middle of winter to help with the ranch.
It is. I mean, there's long days in this.
There's some 4 a.m. calls out.
We've had some casting calls at 4. Yeah.
But it's not the same as just going out to feed the cattle at 4 o'clock in the morning and out there in that wind.
That's true. I'll forever be grateful to my dad for kind of, I want to say, instilling a work ethic when I was young to doing that. But yeah, it's it's different style.
Tell us a little bit about your father. I mean, what makes him so special?
Well, my dad is he's a salt of the earth guy. He's a genuine guy. He's a hard worker. He wouldn't ask anybody to do anything that he wouldn't do. And he loves horses. He loves cattle. He goes every day. He's on a ranch somewhere. He's driving. He's not a sit at the home kind of guy. He's just always out on ranches, looking at cattle, looking at horses. I mean, this is his life. And I think as a man, he just instilled a set of morals, and I even want to say just a self of justice of, like this is what's kind of like black and white. These are things that I believe should be, right, and these are things that should be wrong, in life in general. And but he's a kind and loving man, but just he taught from doing. He was an action-oriented person. He is an action-oriented even today. I don't want to sound like he's immobile because he's not, but he's an action-oriented guy. You bet. He rides every day. I mean, I don't want to say every day, but he drives. He's at a ranch. He still rides quite a bit. I mean, he competes in ranch rodeos that we are involved in, and so my dad is extremely active in the ranching world.
Wow. Do you have a dream distributor for the film? A specific streaming service or platform you'd like to see it in?
Lauren may have some ideas on this, but I'm open. I know Paramount does a lot of things, a lot of genre in this genre, but we would just I feel like I'm open. I just would love to find a great partner, and we're open to talking with anyone about the possibilities, and we're open to ideas. I am, yeah.
At all the Hollywood talk that everybody had, I think Paramount has a proven to everyone else that it works and can make money. And one thing we all know about Hollywood is if one person is making money, the rest will show up to try to make money on the same.
Yes.
I got a quick ranching question. You know, a lot of people don't get into ranching and farming. You know, everyone's like, if you want to make money, become a doctor, get into computers. But do you think that with the advent of TikTok and social media, you're starting to see a lot of farmers that are TikToking and getting onto social media? How important is that to show the world what you guys actually do, getting up at 4 a.m., the struggles you have, but also to the successes? So how important is the TikTokers and the Instagram influencers and the YouTubers that show the day-to-day life of what you do, of what your family's done for hundreds of years?
Well, I think it's amazing, and I think I'm seeing it. There's some people that, for example, I'm thinking about a ranch right now north of Abilene, and like one of the main guys on the ranch, he does the TikTok videos of him riding out through wheat field and moving cattle, and so it's very action oriented, or roping, or things like that. You know, things that need to be done, and he's created a huge following, and I think it does because there's a lot of different ways that people are involved in a lot of different aspects of ranching. You know, they could be, well, I'm selling bulls, or I'm selling calves, or, you know, different ways of doing it. And so especially if you're having like a big sale every year and you're selling like a certain type of bull or horses or these guys say. So these TikTok videos that are being done, they're doing them now, and they're great. I mean, they're adding a lot of people that are out there. They're learning about it. It's action oriented. I think that's the best thing. And people are they're riding along with them right out there in the middle of the wheat field.
And partners are getting interested in the farming and ranching industry that they might not even have an interest before.
Well, 100%. I think it's like, you know, people may sit down to like to eat steak, but they don't know how this whole process evolved. And so, yeah, I think you're exactly right. You know, you could be living in the middle of a metropolitan area and not ever know anything about the farming or ranching business, but you're watching these TikTok videos and you're getting a sample of you're getting a window into a life that maybe you otherwise wouldn't have been able to see.
Do you think, you know, the barbecue industry is now $1 billion industry? You know, just whether it be buying meat and the grills and the smokers, do you think that has helped farmers and ranchers here in Texas? Is that $1 billion barbecue market, which is now a major hobby for a lot of people? Does that help the ranchers and the farmers here in Texas?
I do. I think, you know, beef, there's a lot of people that really enjoy beef, and I think that they continue to enjoy beef, and I think that barbecue, this definitely doesn't hurt. I think it does. So, you know, I feel, and people, there's a lot of cook-offs you're talking about. So
there's a lot of YouTube videos. I'm part of a barbecue group on Facebook that's almost 500,000 people. And you know, a lot of these barbecue companies, Traeger and Weber, have gone public. I mean, it's $1 billion business, and people don't realize that. And so my question is, do you think it's helped our farmers and ranchers? Because you're seeing a lot of farmers and ranchers now selling directly. Snake River Farms, for example. They're selling directly.
Yeah, 4.6s, yeah. And so I would say that on that is one of the big things too, is there's no antibiotics and things. And so, like, for example, there's some of these that do all natural, and we're involved in this program as well, where we sell beef straight to groups that they document an animal from its birth all the way until it gets shipped there, and making sure that there's no steroids, there's no hormones, there's no antibiotics, nothing like that that's given to that animal, and they document it. And I think the all natural beef has really taken off, and so this is what you talk about, like is drawn a lot of viewers and got a lot of people that are interested in it, and also people that want to eat just very clean beef that has no antibiotics, no hormones, no anything like this. This all natural has really taken shape. And you know, the thing about it is, when you're dealing with all natural, if they find that you have one animal that's, you know, yes, I accidentally gave this calf a shot of an injection of blackleg or something for you, you're out. You know, that they won't take it. So it's very strict. They come out, they monitor you, they make sure, so you know when that animal is sold that it's 100%, you know, natural, and I think people appreciate that.
Well, I think we need to wrap up a bit. So is there anything we haven't touched on that y'all would like to wrap up with?
Well, regarding distribution, we think that this project might have legs in the international market as well, because there's a lot of international interest in the Texas culture and just Texas landscape and the cowboy concept, the rancher concept. So